Hello, marketers. This is the Funnel Lab, and welcome to Funnel Lab Fridays. Funnel Lab Fridays is a weekly LinkedIn live session where we dive kind of into use cases and challenges for data-savvy marketers. I'm your host, Eric Westerkamp, CEO of CaliberMind, and joining me today are Raja Walia, CEO and founder of GMW Consulting, and Kelsey White, the Director of Revenue Analytics and Attribution at GMW Consulting. Today, Raja, Kelsey, and I will be talking about organizing target accounts for ABM at scale. Welcome, Raja. Welcome, Kelsey. Maybe you guys could just give me a little bit of background on yourself and on GMW Consulting before we kind of get into things.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies first, Kelsey.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Kelsey White. I'm the Director of Analytics and Attribution here at GMW Consulting. I actually joined GMW in April of this year. Previously, I was actually at CaliberMind working with Eric. So, it's a familiar face here. And prior to that, I actually worked at Snowflake and worked at Adobe as well, focused in on some of the attribution and analytics platforms. Been in the industry, I guess, for 10 years now and just enjoying it and having fun and really loving working at GMW and working with a bunch of different customers across different products.
Great. Raja.
Yeah. I think the only thing I've ever done in my entire life is consulting, because when I graduated from Arizona State University, I went into consulting. I maybe had like a full-time in-house position as a communications email coordinator for maybe 3-4 years. And then after I took over consulting, I've just been consulting since 2010. On various MarTech stack, worked at a couple bigger agencies, smaller agencies, got certified in multiple platforms. And then in 2018, decided, hey, you know what, I think let me branch off on my own and just become kind of like a contractor. And then all of a sudden I have a company, and now I'm trying to figure out tax codes, and tax fines in different states, rather than just building analytics, like revenue models or life cycle stages or working with that. I'm trying to figure out how not to get fined because I didn't file the right paperwork. So
all the fun of building and scaling a company in an organization.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, great. Thanks for joining me today. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump in. And Kelsey and Raja, half of the battle, I think, with ABM is really kind of account selection, right? And so how do you guide your clients kind of on this front? When they first engage you, they probably already have an idea of this is what ABM is, and this is how we're going to implement it, and here's our accounts for ABM. What kind of advice and guidance do you give them, and then how do you also kind of get them to be honest, to take that advice and maybe change some of their behaviors and how they implement ABM?
Yeah, I think at the very starting, we have two types of general clients from an ABM perspective. One who are already underway with their ABM initiative, and one who have, hey, we want to start ABM. What's a good starting point? And regardless of what we've seen from clients, regardless of size of company, is that first we have to understand what is account-based marketing and separate it from regular marketing. Because a lot of people will come in and say, hey, we want to, make sure we target all of these accounts in a mass scale that we want to go after. Our ICP is, ideal customer profile is the top 5 companies in the world. And we've seen that consistently across so many companies. I have this running joke, I would love to sell into Google, just like anyone would love to sell into Google. But I think the big differentiator and the big starting point is you have to look at analytically, who are the people that are wanting and doing business with you versus the people that you want, because ideal customer profile is supposed to be that, but ideal customer profile has now kind of more so are focusing on the ideal part, not the customer profile part. So the first thing that we do is reestablish what is actually ICP, what is your ideal customer profile, people that are wanting to buy what you're selling versus people that you want to sell to. So to kind of take the ideal out of customer profile.
Yeah, I agree with Raja on that. I think it's a lot of assessing what is kind of who is a client of yours now. What do they kind of have in common with other, I guess, target accounts that you'd want to go after? And then, use those data points to leverage within your marketing strategy.
Yeah,
How
and,
do you,
and you know, there's like a slew of data, right? Like that's available inside that that people just blatantly ignore because they have the, marketers generally have like shiny object syndrome more so than like other parts of the business, is because they'll look at something, they'll implement a tool, they think something is going to solve their account-based marketing initiative that isn't working or panning out as well. And generally it's because you're not really focusing on the data. Like you're not focusing on analytics of who is buying from you. You're focusing on your personal, your personal kind of like preference of like, I really want this account. This would be a really cool logo on the website. Like I said, the ideal customer profile is customer profile first and ideal based off on the data. But now, a lot of the time we see it's switched. Like it's more ideal. It's more who do we want to work with? It's more
yeah,
inner focus rather than actual clients that are coming to you and saying, I think your product is pretty cool. Like, let's have a conversation about it. And you're like, well, are you Google? Are you Microsoft?
mm,
Well, okay, no problem. Like, we'll definitely talk to you as well. But this is our account-based marketing strategy. And then people wonder, I wonder why it's not taking off.
yeah. How do you start to help a company? So you come into an organization, there sounds like they may or may not have a great idea of what their ABM or their ICP should be. How do you help them start to figure out what their ICP actually is? How do you measure it? And then how do you get enough data around that to be able to select new companies for an ICP, right? Now, I'll give you, so we're constantly going through our ICP and reevaluating it because it changes over time, right? Market dynamics today are not the market dynamics in 2023. So you may change your ICP slightly to kind of take that into account. How do you work with companies to kind of figure that out and measure that?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of kind of assessing your current data set, right? So we're looking at what opportunities have closed, like what companies have become clients over the last whatever period of time that we're assessing. What are the products of interest that they're looking to purchase from us? What are the industries that they fit within? And then also like how are they engaging with you, right? Like what are those campaigns and channels that they're commonly coming from? And I think it's also a matter of looking at things like obviously revenue, right? Like where are we generating most of our dollars from in kind of correlation to where we're spending most of our dollars as well. And then from there, taking some of those data points and kind of building out like, okay, we know for like our business, we work really well with the like education vertical. And we have had great success selling into higher learning. And when we do X, Y, and Z, like we convert at a higher rate. And so let's continue to market toward those, colleges or universities and continue to spend money in those efforts that they've engaged with historically to try and bring in similar or like accounts that kind of fit the profile of what products they might also be interested in that we offer.
Yeah,
Interesting.
like also from a services perspective, right? Like it's very broad. Like a company can sell multiple things. They can sell products, multiple products. From a B2C perspective, if you think about like selling, like the term ABM doesn't apply, but there's still products that are being sold to a customer base. And then what are the related products that you can sell,
Mhm.
upsell or cross sell? However, one of the biggest things is we don't look at data first. We create kind of in my opinion, a glorified persona that is based off on an account that has X amount of revenue and say we want to target them. But to Kelsey's point is like when we're selling into EDU, like EDUs, for example, we have a very clear message already defined based off on a success metric. Like we've already been through the entire funnel from you looking at vendors and different agencies. You chose us for a reason, and these are the results that you garnered from it. That amount of data, when you say we're going to target different EDUs, or let's just say if we want to go after different EDUs, we already have a proof of concept, not even a proof of concept, actually, we already have a finalized success metrics that we can use in our marketing to directly to them, right? Like that would be a targeted account-based marketing strategy because we're targeting EDUs based off on data we have
Right.
and based off on results we can already kind of demonstrate.
Interesting. And so, if to kind of recap that, you're taking, instead of really saying this is really who we want to go after,
Yeah.
you're more sitting kind of measuring who is already engaging with us, what's working, where's sort of revenue and things coming from, and then what are the success criteria? What's gotten them, like, why did they engage and buy things? And then trying to find other companies that match and hit that profile and kind of go after them. And that becomes sort of your, not just your ICP, but also account selection and who you're going to focus on, and even the tactics you're going to go after it with. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
I would,
Yeah, no, no, that's
Go ahead,
100%
Raja.
accurate. No, I was just gonna say what you're saying. That's 100% accurate. I think one of the simplest ABM campaigns I ever did back in the day before ABM, like before it was pronounced ABM, or they classified and as account-based marketing,
Yeah.
was very simply we were working with a client, and they went through an entire vendor selection to obtain this one client. And all we did was send out an email saying, hey, this client, this company during the vendor selection process chose us, and this is why. And we sent that to the same industry as that one company. So now if you think about the archetype of a buyer, like, and they receive an email, it's a very simple email that said, oh, and they're in the vendor selection process. Oh, hey, this competitor or this related industry chose these guys, right?
Mhm.
Why did they choose them? It kind of bumps you up from a demo perspective, or like maybe they'll book a call with you to figure out like, hey, so we got, and very, very simple email, right? All it did was generate interest, and it just moved a little bit of acknowledgement because it was a related industry. So the concept of a buyer and the like, if you think about yourself as someone that is buying something, and you get an email saying, I am also, or this company also chose us, you start wondering, well, why? Like, what were the benefits, right? And you have a conversation, you start a conversation. Simplest form of ABM, right?
Yeah. Right.
But once again, like there's differences to it. Like there's, stuff that you can expand to it, but that's what I would think is kind of missing. And like when we talk about ABM personalization, people focus too much on the tokenized or the personalization part of like, hi, first name, your company is this, like
Yeah.
that's just normal marketing, right? Like that's the baseline level of stuff that you need to do to even be like coherent in a platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you could, it's kind of a great segue into sort of asking about what does personalization within ABM then mean to you, and how do you leverage it with different customers?
Oh, Raja, I'd lean on you for this one. I think you did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So there's two ideas, and I think we even talked about this earlier, is that what people consider personalization versus like when you add the word personalization next to ABM, right?
Mhm.
Like, what are the two differences? When you talk about personalizing account-based marketing, you're not talking about, what we call token values, or, filters, or whatever they're
Mhm.
called, where you just put in hi, insert first name, and then automatically populates your first name. Like that is, once again, that is like baseline marketing, right? And we're not
Right.
talking about segmentation where you segment your database based off on products, and you say, hi, Eric, you're interested in product A, you should talk to us. That's not ABM personalization. That's just baseline marketing, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like, so when we talk about personalizing in ABM and ABM strategies for our clients, it's to what Kelsey is saying is, when we personalize an account-based marketing strategy for you, or if we want to see, is your account-based marketing strategy working, we go into the data portion of it. Are you targeting the right accounts that are working with you, that are showing interest, or are you in the ideal part of the customer profile where you've created a list of target accounts that
Mhm.
you want, not vice versa, that you want? And when we talk about personalization, that's what we talk about. We talk about personalizing an ABM strategy based off on data analytics that exist of
Mhm.
buyers, of people who have shown interest, and then create an ideal customer profile based off on that. And then we personalize the content. Going back to the example of EDU, we personalize EDU content based off of the success metrics of an EDU company. Hey, we worked with them. This is what we generated. These are how many, students signed up, or these are how many graduate undergrad programs. Like, this was our success rate. Now that is personalizing it, and we are sending it to other potential EDU clients, right? That's
Right.
ABM personalization.
Right.
Yeah. Personalizing it based on like the vertical, the client industry, right? Like showing metrics that matter to them versus like
Yeah.
just like splash, like, hey, Kelsey, look at
Mhm.
this content or what have you. It's like, we've done this with other EDU customers, and like, here's how, they've converted these in like leads into students or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. And so it sounds like to get to that point, you need to have a relatively good understanding of sort of the buyer journey. Like, because for you to be able to come up with that, you need to be able to go look at, here's 5 accounts that worked. What
Yeah.
was their, I'm just kind of, is that accurate?
No,
Like,
no, no, no.
what
You're correct.
worked with them to do that? Do you need those buyer journeys to be able to build out your ABM programs, or do you
I wouldn't say like
flip that?
necessarily. Like, I think that's a nice to have, right? Like, if you're like, especially if you're like targeting at specific points within the buyer journey,
Yeah.
as it relates to your ABM strategy. But like, ultimately, like, at the end of the day, it's like, what is converted into revenue or what is
Yeah,
converted into
yeah.
like, this metric? What do we, like, what is our KPI? And then like use that as kind of like the goal to then look at the other accounts that hit that KPI. And then it's like, okay, we can go back and target other accounts that fit this profile that we also want to, drive to revenue or drive to pipeline or whatever it may be. But I
Mhm.
don't think you necessarily need to have like a fully fleshed out buyer journey all the time. I think
Mhm.
people kind of stumble in that regard. And sometimes like, trying to build out new life cycle stages or
Mhm.
whatever it may be, and thinking like that's the solution to understanding where to attack with an ABM strategy. But I don't think that that's always the right approach. And I don't know, Raja, if you agree or disagree, but I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's multiple parts. Like so metrics and a result minus revenue. Like, and let me explain what I mean by that. Is that when we're starting an ABM strategy, everyone will say, hey, we want to target accounts to generate revenue. Revenue, the thing is, revenue is always the end goal of everything. Like, no one is doing stuff for IOUs or or something like that. Like, the idea of any, like, when you do content syndication, you're hoping someone finds what
Yeah.
your piece of content is, and it, resonates with it and contacts you, and then you can sell into them. So
Yeah.
revenue is always going to be the goal, right? No matter what. And when we talk about ABM and we talk about these metrics, is that you break down knowing full well the revenue is the goal, right? Knowing full well if that's the outcome, then we start measuring a few things. We look at who is engaging with you, why are they engaging with you, and what channels are they engaging with you on. And then we decide based off on who has already bought. And you have, as a company, if you haven't sold a deal in 2024, I don't know if you're still around. So you have closed won deals, right? Like, people have bought your product. So
Mhm.
now you measure that against people who are doing similar type of engagements. So one ABM strategy is really to look at these particular accounts, the channels that they're coming into, and then using that data to either do more of those to generate more top of funnel interest or to get more top of funnel engagement, and then move them down into bottom of funnel where you can get more targeted messaging. Like, and that sounds so, like, even saying that sounds like so broad and cliche, right? Like, it's using that data to drive people across the entire funnel, not just to say we're going to implement ABM because we want more money. Like, no duh, like, obviously, right? Like that is why you're running a campaign, right? So you have to have an idea of your entire funnel. You have to understand, and within that funnel, what are the micro funnels of accounts that are engaging with that you want to kind of go after based off on it, right? Not just, did we get a bunch of Google people? I mean, I keep making fun of Google all the time because it's like the best example. Because any ABM strategy I've worked on in the last 5 years, or whenever ABM is a thing, no matter what a company is selling, Google is always part of their top 10 account tier
Mhm.
list. Like, no matter what, they're always there, right? Like, everyone wants to sell. Like, what do you sell? Pencils. Oh, all right. So Google top 10 ABM list. That's awesome.
Mhm. Is that because ABM, most organizations really view ABM not as a set of tactics, but more as a way of segmenting and then saying, we're now going to focus on these companies. Like, here's my ideal, right? So it's
Yeah,
ABM,
I
I
get what you're
it's
saying.
like, so it's like, here's the companies I want, therefore I need to focus on them. So let's
yeah,
Correct.
put an ABM strategy in to
Correct.
go get them.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
exactly
then, and,
right,
and,
Eric.
and then it doesn't work, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't work. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know why it didn't work. And I was like, well, because you didn't look at any of the people that actually bought from you. Sorry, Kelsey, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
yeah,
I like work. I mean, I like in past lives, I suppose, like, well, I recall like getting into the ABM approach, like, and seeing like, it's like, these are the accounts that we want. And it's like, well, yeah, of course we want those accounts. Like, and
yeah,
like, that's how we've
Mhm.
segmented it and everything else. But it's like, also like, they're not a good fit. Like at the end of the day, like it was very interesting sometimes, like looking at like what our target accounts were and then just being like, but the product won't actually solve what they need. And so it was
Yeah.
like, I
yeah,
think that's the other thing too. It's like, yeah, we want those big names and logos, right? But like focus on what's actually going to generate business, like who's
Mhm.
going to be an actual customer, and
Mhm.
like leverage the tool and get value out of your
Yeah.
platform
Yeah.
or whatever you're selling.
That's cool. Well, I think at this point of the Funnel Lab Fridays, we typically switch into tool time. And so today we're actually going to start to
not to
show
be
off.
confused with home improvement
Not
from the
home
tool man,
improvement, I know.
Taylor, tool
Like you brought that
time.
up yesterday at our as we were talking. I was like, like
That's
I'm never
honestly
gonna get
like
that
the
out of my head
first.
now.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, that's the
Yeah.
first thing. I mean, I
Tim the
think for
tool
the
time
next one,
Taylor.
you need you
Yeah.
need a hammer and you need like a saw and you need their logo and
Yeah,
didn't they do
exactly.
like a grunting noise or something?
Yeah.
Right? Like they did a grunting noise, right? Like
Yes.
you should
It's something.
transition. That should be the transition into tool time part of the section.
I'll talk to
Yes.
Doug about getting
Yeah.
that transition in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking yesterday where we were kind of really drilling into like, well, how do we measure and how do you actually understand if stuff is working, right? And we actually started to look a little bit at some of the ABM programs that we're running, right? And one of the ways that we're doing it is that, CaliberMind has a whole pillar for measuring engagement, right? And it's different than attribution because I think attribution is powerful, but very backward looking and it puts everything in the context of revenue dollars, which is good, but it's also bad because that
Well,
works well.
attribution currently is on the same path as ABM as a strategy, right? Like
Yeah,
like true attribution, multi-touch
yeah,
attribution
yeah,
is something that takes time time to develop. And once again, it's turning into a glorified, let's look at every single touch point on the face of this
no,
planet and allocate $2, $3 and
yeah,
equate where should we be spending our dollars, right? Like it's just attribution is going the wayside of every marketing strategy where it was a really cool concept, ABM, really cool concept, and
yeah,
then we take it and we just beat it into the ground and we just keep
yeah,
using it even though we're not ready for it, and we keep spending money on it even if we're not ready for it, and then we figure out like after X amount of budget has been spent, what happened, like why we're not getting this. Like, what do you mean web visits have $70 million in revenue? So why are we even bother doing marketing if web visits are the ones that are driving traffic? So
yeah. Well, I think, just to kind of expand on that, I think a lot of companies, instead of viewing attribution as a way of using it as a tool that directionally can help them make really good decisions. They've used it as a tool to try to measure everything that's happening and justify all the stuff that's going on, right? And which are two very different outcomes you're looking for. And we see
correct.
that both in our customer base. But what's interesting is that when you start to go into the ABM side or the engagement side, and we don't actually classify this as an ABM tool because it can be used for ABM, but it can also be used in a whole bunch of other ways, right? What we're really focusing in on is just let's measure engagement, but then the big question is, what does that mean? A lot of companies spend a lot of time trying to figure out how, like, what is this worth X and is that worth Y? We've actually built in an algorithm, a regression algorithm that just basically says we're just going to tell us what's important to you. Opportunity opens, opportunity closes, and we're going to figure it out and give you weights for everything. And then once you have that in place, you start to measure engagement. Here we're showing engagement across 7,000 companies that are engaged with us and our brand, which is a lot, right? How many are high, how many are most, and what that looks like at a campaign level. The challenge is that when you start to really drill in here, it's just too much data, right? What does it mean for paid search to generate 5,000 points this quarter, or this week of engagement? The data is interesting, but it's not usable. So what I was showing you guys yesterday is like, well, what if you could break that down at the much more granular level for ABM? And this is where, in our case, every tranche for us is about 200 customers that we've selected. Like, we've actually used our ICP model to select the customers and find, here's 200 that we want to focus on. We actually say we want customers that have been shown some level of engagement with us prior to them going into a tranche, right? So we want to
And
say
a
these
tranche,
companies,
because I had to Google this yesterday. A tranche is a grouping. It is a cohort.
grouping
It
a
is a
cohort
cohort.
of companies.
Yeah.
And that's how
So
we use it,
just
right?
know. Yeah. Just know. Yeah.
Yeah. But then when we do that, we could break it down and say, okay, for that specific, here's 189 companies, right? How many of them have gotten engaged? We can start to measure, and this gets back to like what tactics, what are they doing with us, right? Like here, an event, drift chat, paid search, you can start to look at it. We can actually bring this all the way down. I thought this was interesting to how many people are getting engaged with what campaigns. And what I like about this is it's actually a different view on how your campaigns are performing than attribution, because it's really telling you how much engagement it's driving outside of whether or not it gets to revenue, to be honest, right? Because often you want to know, is it driving engagement? Is it moving people down the funnel? Because tying some of the stuff all the way to revenue can often be difficult. But the goal is, are these campaigns having an effect in moving? I've got a tranche I'm going after, a grouping, a cohort, and I want to move them down the funnel, right? And this is actually
And that could be an account list, right? Like that could be like a target account that you wanted to measure, you wanted to see as well.
yeah,
One of the most common questions that we generally get asked is like, what are all the things that someone has done? And I think
right,
like what are all of these things that they've done in order to become a customer, or even if it's closed one or closed loss, so we can change it. And I think there's one part of this that you showed yesterday, which I think was so cool.
yeah,
Like if we like that
Roger's
it
teeing you up,
generally
Eric.
I
yeah,
know, no, I'm serious, like because I think
We're
people
forcing
need to
you, I should
know.
say.
No, well,
yeah,
no, I think from a product perspective, I think
It
it's
was
very
very
unique.
cool.
yeah,
Yeah. So like imagine whoever is listening in right now is imagine like the question that every marketer gets asked is like, hey, what are all the things that someone did?
yeah,
Like what are all of these things that they did in the past that we wanted to see? We wanted to create like that life funnel of all of the activities and these engagement points that you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's really cool because at the end of the day, these trends and these charts and these scores are interesting, and they help you kind of focus in and make decisions. But you really need to know, like, okay, this thing worked. Why? What do they
Yeah.
do? And how do I do more of it, replicate it, right? And so we were looking, I think, at maybe this specific, like here I went to, I've got engagement, I've got a tranche, which companies are getting engaged? I drilled right into this company. And then I think I hit our AI summary capability here, which went out and it basically took all that data about that account and said, you know what, let's put this in a form that, to be honest, is human readable, that people can
Yeah.
actually use and
This is so
leverage.
sick.
Yeah, no, seriously, like this is one of the coolest parts because instead of going through and looking at every activity and saying that there's a conversion point,
Yeah,
you've incorporated AI to literally tell you like these are the things that this person did, right? So
yeah,
if you were ever looking at it from a product perspective and said, well, what did, our buyers do? Like what are they doing, right? Like
yeah,
if this doesn't paint about as clear as a picture without you actually doing more than a click of a button, I don't know what else would, because
yeah,
it shows you right there what
yeah,
exactly someone's doing. Like this was like one of the coolest things that I've seen from a product, from an analytics product in a while.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. We've been working hard on pulling this together,
Yeah,
um, and what I find really exciting about this is this sort of just like for us, it's kind of the tip of the spear, because the next things that we want to be able to do with this, because there's a whole bunch of follow-on questions that people have based upon
yeah,
this, right? So it's like, okay, that's the buyer group, but are there other people that I should be talking to at this company that I'm not right now? Well, how would you know that? Well, I would go look at 5 or 6 companies that are like this company that worked, and what did their buyer group look like? And let's go figure out if we have those people
yeah.
and tell you that. And then because you and I were talking about, we're adding things like, write me an email that I can use to reach out to these people, cut and paste it out and go over here, right? And summarize this data and kind of show me these things.
It's great.
Yeah. Good. I
Like
think
one
we
thing,
are.
one thing I will say from a personalization perspective, this is my once again, I guess from a personalization and going back to the account-based marketing, ABM personalization, my personal opinion on this, that's why I was trying to
Yeah.
struggle to get this out, is that for a very specific ABM strategy, unfortunately, I don't think from our our clients that we worked with, I don't think copy and paste is the best solution. Like
Yeah.
if you're gonna target someone, like target them, find something about like this data is so cool because you could use this data to really have a conversation or send an email that makes sense to them
Yeah.
as well, right? And so I think it's one thing to point out is like when we talk about personalization, just remember personalize it, but personalize it not in a way where you have a standard script, right? And if you do have a standard script because you're targeting more than like 100, 300 accounts, then
Yeah.
more than likely you're not doing an ABM strategy. You're probably just doing marketing at that point.
Right. You're just doing outbound.
Yeah.
Slightly tailored outbound. Yeah. No, what I love about this, and we're testing it with our sales team, is that they can look at this and we can actually have it just auto create, like, okay, write me 3 emails that takes this information, is focused on this person. Then the salesperson can then take it because you want them also involved in, okay, is this the right thing? Maybe I'll tweak it, do a few things, right? I don't think you want to take the human out of the loop there,
For sure.
completely. But you can at least give them the, like, here's what we think is works. Here's something that's interesting to say to them that we think will get their attention. That is focused on, hey, by the way, we noticed that you looked at these couple of pieces of content. Here's another piece of content I think you may be interested in that is related to that, right? Boom.
Yeah, I mean the Salesforce activities alone, right? Like a demo request, scheduled a meeting, outreach
Yeah.
logged in Salesforce. Like, there's a lot of quick things that you can decipher from this and see what they're and utilize those just in general across like all your buyer groups or tranches. Like this.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we are actually getting pretty close to time. Raja, Kelsey, thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so
Yeah,
this
thanks for
wraps
having
up.
us.
Yeah, this wraps up this episode of Funnel Up Friday. Next week, we're going to be having Meredith Folk of Itumos. They'll be joining us to discuss how to kind of declutter funnel performance data. Raj, Kelsey, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.